All right, here we go. Am I on? Looks like I am. Great. Okay, so hello, good morning. This is another live stream for DGST 101, the summer 22 edition. If you are watching this, then perhaps you're a student in the class, perhaps not. As long as somebody's watching, I guess that's good. This video is intended for students in the class, obviously, and this is, kind of my lecture for the class. I do see I have 2 viewers according to the dashboard. It looks like one of them might be Al Coffin, so who's not even in the class. So, hi Al, good to see you again. Oh, and there's Sonia, great. That's someone else who is in the class, so good to see you online. So today I'm going to be talking, obviously, about the object lesson project and really the final bits of advice and instruction related to that, and then you're on your own to finish it, obviously. Things are due today. This is Friday, but bearing in mind that due dates are pretty soft in my class. Excuse me. In other words, if you need a couple more days, it's not a big deal, but try to get things done today if possible. And today I'm going to show you how to finish those final steps, how to complete the final steps of this project here. This is assuming that you've done the research, or maybe it's still in process, but you've got some research and you're trying to figure out how to put it into a timeline. That's the main thing I'm going to talk about today, which is how to get that data into a timeline and present it. So, great. Oh, yeah, sorry, I just got a DM, but it's unrelated. Okay, so this is, sorry, still coughing, still not totally over COVID, I think, but I'm feeling a lot better. So anyway, this is the notes for today. This is some background, and I wanted to talk kind of briefly. I don't want to get into a ton of detail about this, but there is an intellectual context for this project that I wanted to at least put in front of you and give you access to in a way that might be interesting. So this is the idea of media archaeology. It's an academic field or maybe subdiscipline where scholars study how media have worked over time, and they try to use media as lenses into culture and vice versa. Kind of hard to explain, and I think easier to see in practice. And so I really like this one scholar, Eric Utamo. If you take a look at his video here, this is the first in the series. Excuse me. At least this is part 1, and I know that I did see a part 2. I don't know if there's much else, but in any case, what he does is he collects old Victorian, and he specializes in Victorian era media devices. And this, I'll just kind of click through a few random points, so it's not, you don't have to play it while he's talking. But he's got different magic lanterns, different slideshow things, different things that were like early animation devices, basically. And yeah, so these are, let me see for an example. And so one of the things that Utama does as a scholar is he tries to think about how these media devices that seem like totally strange and foreign and ancient to us now, but these really laid the foundations for, and they really worked in people's homes in ways that are analogous to how video games work in our homes today. And there are not just technical analogies there, but social analogies. So the idea of like the family having this sort of family game night or around a board game, that's something that is used to market board games now. That idea was also used to market early video games like the Magnavox Odyssey and really plenty of others. But that idea of like a media device being a thing by which the usually the father who goes out into the world and works, that he's able to bring the world home to the living room. That's something that technology was, that the technology is one of the things that the father who went out to work brought home to his middle class family. So this is the idea of the middle class is really built around these kinds of practices and these kind of spaces at home, like a living room. So Hutamo gives us a way to talk about that, and he also just has some really cool devices that he's able to show off. I actually have something here. Let me see. I'll be right back. Let's see. I want to make sure I'm on camera with this because I have a prop today. I didn't actually plan on showing this today, but I happened to see it here. So this is my stereo viewer. It's just got one card in it. This is, you can take a look here. This is a Victorian era stereo viewer. It's meant for viewing stereo optical images. This one I think is, let's see, this is patented 1891, but I think this particular one was made a little later. Yeah, well, okay, so this part says it is patented in 1901, so it's at least later than 1901. I think this was like maybe 10 or so years later. But it's pretty neat. It has a handle that folds out in the bottom. The idea is you put cards in it. I just have 1 or 2 cards that I printed off the web, and this is like a, I don't know what that is. It's some national park, I think. And the idea is when you stick it in here on this part, then you can adjust it. This one actually is adjustable. You can slide it in and out to, wait, let me just make myself a little bit more centered here so you can see what I'm doing. Special effects today on this video. So anyway, this is the stereo. Yeah, this is it. And it's got this thing that slides in and out so you can adjust the focus. And then when you look through it, you won't be able to see across the stream here, obviously, but when you look through it, the 2 lenses combine the 2 sides of the image. You see how it's got 2 sides on it. It combines them into one, but they are offset slightly from each other, so the effect that you get is that it's a 3D image, and it looks really convincing. Like, it's really pretty compelling and pretty neat as an effect. So I like my stereo viewer. I've only printed out like a this one facsimile card, but you can buy sets of stereo view cards off of eBay and stuff, but I haven't found a good set that I like. Yeah, but I got this viewer a while ago. It's my oldest media device in my collection, I guess. But anyway, this is the kind of thing that Erkki Utamo talks about. He has a much, like, that's really my only Victorian era thing. He's got a whole room full here, and it's just fascinating. Okay, so let me turn things back on the way I normally do it. There we go. And then I'll bring myself back down into the corner. There we go. All right. So this is this is something to do kind of as background and something that might help you think about the ways that you've used your media device. Because if you're thinking about the lived history, you're going to have to think about and sometimes create a kind of social context or build a narrative around some of these things. So this might give you some ideas about how to do that. If not, I mean, it's still just neat looking, so right, that's probably good enough. Okay, so as far as the final bit to the assignment, I'm going to talk through what you need to do there. Just the only other thing, I don't have slides for today because there's not much really to talk about, but the only other thing to bear in mind for this week is you've got a reading assigned in perusal, so make sure you do that. And then there's also just the week 3 reflection and report, which is the standard kind of thing. So there's no real need to explain that, hopefully, but basically think back on all the different readings and the different activities, things like phone story, things like the phone made by slaves, things like the e-waste videos, and things like Utamo's videos. Think about all those things and how they all form your help form your ideas about your device and the investigation that you've been doing for your device this week. Yeah, so the yeah, so the main thing, I guess, yeah, let me just jump into Timeline.js because that's really where you should be at this point. Now, if you're still working on the research, that's totally fine. I mean, if you're still trying to figure out the background, if you're even still trying to figure out how to take your device apart, or deciding if you want to do that, right? I mean, I understand that this is a work in progress, and you all may be at different phases of it. But today I'm going to be talking about and assuming that you've already done this stuff, like you've already figured out what you want to talk about for the prehistory, lived history, and afterlife. And then I'm going to show you how to put that information into a timeline using this tool called Timeline.js. I mean, you may have already started on this. That's fine too. I mean, I think the Timeline.js website is pretty good at explaining how to do it. But I've had a few, I mean, I have some tips and I have some advice about how to do it for this particular assignment. And I also have I'm going to work on one now, and I will share it with you in Discord in case you want to use my template as a starting point. So this is the one I started earlier today. So this is how it works. So I mean, you can read a bit about the Timeline.js product here and see some examples of it. The easiest thing, I think, though, is to just go straight to the Make a Timeline section. And as you can see, there's 4 steps. So first one, you make a copy of their template. That's what you should do first. You then publish it to the web, which is what's going to make it possible for other people to access this, and also for you to render it as a timeline. You can't even render it as a timeline until you publish it to the web, so make sure you do that. And then copy and paste the URL here, and then you should be able to see it with these links down here. So I'll go through that process here just with a brand new one just to show you this whole process, but I've already done it earlier today. So Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm already logged in. I mean, the pre-step here is I'm already logged into my Google Drive account. If you were not already logged into a Drive account, you would need to do that before you can make a copy, but I am already here, so I'll make a copy. I'm not going to go over how to sign into Google Drive. I assume you know how to do that, or hope you know how to do that. And this is what the Timeline.js template looks like to begin with. And it's, you know, you can look around and kind of see some things here. This top row is the name of each field of information that it needs. So year, month, day, these are time related, obviously. The headline, the text, these have descriptive names that tell you, that probably give you a sense of what these different things are going to be used for, but it's easiest to see once you actually put it into a timeline. So you remember that was step one. I just made a copy. Step two is I need to publish to the web. And you should go ahead and do this even if you're not done with it, because you need to render it and see what it looks like as you're working on it so that you can decide if it's good. So you go to share and then publish to the web right here. This menu has changed a bit over time, but it's under the share here. So file, share, publish to the web. And then they're like, are you really sure? And you say yes, and you say publish. And it's like, are you really, really sure? And you say yes, okay. And then we're done. Now here's a step that often is confusing. So it looks like you need this URL because Google's like, hey, here's this URL of the public view of this. You don't actually need that. In fact, you should X that out. You do need to give Timeline.js, the software, a URL for this spreadsheet so it knows to process it, but it's not that one. Okay, so I just saw somebody said you're struggling with timeline. So I'm hoping this is helpful then, by the way. So if you have a question about a particular step as I do it, then it would be great if you just let me know or ask me to clarify some part of it. But anyway, so I've just published to HTML, so that was publishing to the web. I did that. Now I need to copy and paste the spreadsheet URL. So not the thing that popped up when I published it, but this thing up here in the browser. So this thing that's in the the location here. So copy that. Technically, what it needs is actually that little token that for me, which is 1QTSGRSATQCH, all that. That's the part it actually needs, but it's in the URL. And if you give it the whole URL, the timeline website is able to split that out. So paste that in here. There are some optional options, but I'm not going to worry about those. I'm just going to go with the defaults. And it's actually, so all this code down here has just been updated now with the with this content, hopefully. So I can check it by previewing it, and this will give me kind of an iframe preview of it, just like embedded in this page. I think it's easier to see if you open it in a new window, so I'm going to click that and open it in its own window. And this is the Google spreadsheet example. So this is it. This is the timeline, and you can see it's a timeline. I can click forward through the sample events that it has and look at the sample embedded media here. I can also look at things and interact with them here on the ribbon at the bottom. Now this is generic information, so it maybe is hard to see what it's doing. It's actually the information from this here, though. So this is mine. I don't know what to say here. So I'll just rename the headline to "This is mine." And I always recommend making incremental changes and then testing them. That's what I do. That's what you should do. So try one thing and see if it makes a difference. And if it does, then that's great. If it doesn't, then you try to figure out why. In this case, I think I just need to keep refreshing until it updates. So sometimes there is a bit of a lag between what you see in the spreadsheet and then what timeline renders over here. It's usually no more than like a minute or so. Yeah, so here we go. So now that's updated with "This is mine." So if you see that kind of thing where it's not instantaneous, then give it 30 seconds, a minute, and it usually catches up. So this is the content now that I wrote, and now this is my spreadsheet. Okay, so this is how you go about creating it, and this is what it does. I'll give you kind of a tour of what the spreadsheet looks like and give you some tips about it, and then I'll show you the spreadsheet with the actual object lesson data in it. Okay, so the top row, like I said, these are the names of things, and you should not change these. In fact, if you try to change it, it'll be like, don't do that. Basically, you'll get this pop-up saying, you really shouldn't do this. Now, if you really want to, I mean, it is your spreadsheet. Like, you can actually say, I'm going to go ahead and do it, but I don't recommend it. In fact, if you change any of these things, if you change the word text to, I don't know, words or something like that, it's going to break. Like, this is kind of fragile, basically. So the connection between the data that you create in the spreadsheet and the rendered view that you see that looks nice is a little bit duct taped together, just because this is a third party, right? This is not a Timeline.js is not a Google product. They're not necessarily on the same page as each other. So this is a product made by Nightlab, and they've just figured out ways to work with the kind of information, the way that Google Spreadsheets presents it. And so there's a few trade-offs with that. One of the trade-offs is that it is possible to break it by doing something wrong in terms of the data. If this was a more robust, self-contained program, then it would be, first of all, not free, probably, but it would also have data controls on the fields that would prevent you from changing these things entirely, and force typing on different things. But because that would be a whole different product. The nice thing about a spreadsheet is that a spreadsheet is very accessible. You can just click things and edit them, and people are familiar with how to edit spreadsheets. But the trade-off is that you're using a spreadsheet like a database, and when you're doing that, whenever you do that, you have to have certain considerations. You have to be very careful, basically. And there's other things. I mean, I've made an application using a spreadsheet as a database. There are lots of good reasons to do that, but it's it's a little fragile. And as long as you pay attention to what you're editing, it's usually fine. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of click through these different fields, the different cells in the spreadsheet. So the headline, this is mine. We saw where that goes. That goes right here at the top of a slide like that. Yeah, and I think you could probably think of this as kind of like a slideshow, really. Text, where it says this is a test of using Google Spreadsheet, that's going to be the text that shows up underneath the headline here. And you can do some different formatting in here, but it's kind of tricky. So let me show you this. So normally it's just going to be plain text. But if you want to, if you want to try to get fancy with it, you can include HTML. So at least I'm pretty sure you can. Let's find out. So I'm going to type HTML here. This is code for formatting, and we will be looking at HTML next week. But I just added the strong tag around the phrase Google Spreadsheets, and so if that works, then that should appear in a bold type. Yeah, that worked actually pretty instantly. So you see now that Google Spreadsheets is now in a bold font. I mean, that was a pretty minor thing. You can do other things, but I'm not going to go into how to use HTML in general as a general concept right now, but just know that you can use HTML in these. You won't see it in the spreadsheet, but you should see it when it's rendered as long as you've written that HTML correctly. So there's another one of those caveats, like it's possible to mess things up in a way that could cause problems, but as long as you feel like you know what you're doing or you want to take your chance, then that's fine. Okay, so the media. This is probably the most important field, so I'm going to come back to this. This is the thing that's going to show up in usually the left side over here. In this case, it's an image, and I think, yeah, in this case, it's a video. You can embed quite a few things. So I'm going to show you a couple examples, several examples, but these are that's where that goes, and I'll come back to that. Media credit, that's going to appear down at the bottom right of the media. The media caption is going to appear down below here, and as you can see, you can use HTML in these as well. That's what this is. So this is the sample one again, and this is an A tag, and an A tag here is a link. So this is going to make a link. Chicago by Zach Wise is clickable. Which timeline? Is that the homepage one? Yeah. So Chicago by Zach Wise, that's a clickable link to where you could access this photo directly on Flickr. So that's a way that you might find it useful to use HTML. If you want to. Okay, so the media thumbnail, this is going to be another piece of media that can show up on the timeline. So when you look down here at the timeline, it's the two dots, that's the Flickr icon. If you want that to be an image of the photo, you could stick that there. That would go there. I don't usually use this field. Okay, so what type of thing is this? The only option you get is, well, actually there's new, I haven't seen that option before, era. That might be useful actually for what we're doing, but I'm not sure, so I'm not going to try it right now. But the main thing you want is title. Leave that alone. So don't add another thing here. Don't make another field the title. Sometimes it's hard to unselect that. Basically, if you accidentally make two fields have the type value set to title, it's for whatever reason, sometimes it's hard to delete that or hard to switch it away from that. So there should be one called title. Title is a special cell. It's a special row, and the main thing that's special about it, as you might have noticed already, is that it doesn't have any date information. Every other row has to have date information, has to have valid date information, but the title one doesn't. So as long as that can have data, it can have date data, but it has to have the title type, and if it has the title type and no data, it'll be fine. Okay, so groups. This is where you can add different things to it. So I'll go ahead and just mess around with this here. I'll say group 1 for that one and group 2 for that one, and show you what that looks like here. Those are going to change the ribbon down here at the bottom. So hopefully you can see sort of behind my head where I've got 2 layers now to this timeline, group 1 and group 2. There's only 2 events in this data in this particular timeline, so it's kind of hard to see how that would play out. But if you have a bunch of things in one group and a bunch of things in another group, they will all be in the same horizontal band as each other, and I think that's a nice way to organize your thing. Okay, so the next thing you can do is you can change the background. You can change the background to a color. This uses a hexadecimal color code. So you know, this, if you want, you can look those up if you want to try to figure that out. I mean, there's plenty of websites that you can use hexadecimal color codes. Again, we'll be talking about this next week. This is HTML, basically. There's a bunch, there's tons of websites that'll help you find these if you don't know this kind of schema on your own. I did not know this one, but this looks fine. Here's a little generator that will help you, if you find the color you want, it'll give you the color, the hex code for it. Lots of ways to get that. If you want to do that, I think the default color is fine. Or if you just want to use the dark gray like they have there, the 333, that's good too. So it's a hash sign and then 3 6 times. So 6 3s. But you can also do an image as the background, and that can be useful too sometimes. This is a neat looking one. Background, what is this pointing to? Oh yeah, so front page image.jpg. Okay, so is that the background of, which one is that? Actually, it looks like it should be loading here, but it isn't, come to think of it, because it's the Vimeo example, right? Yeah, so that one isn't loading correctly, which is kind of interesting. That's their default. And that's their example code. But so we could try this with something else. I'm kind of curious if you can make a video background. Probably, but I don't feel like figuring that out right now. But anyway, if you want, you can include media that way, I suppose, as well. Okay, so just a quick tour of what the Timeline.js spreadsheet template looks like. And I'm next going to show you how I've started to put this together. And specifically, I'm going to show you how to work with the media field. Actually, let me show you what's available here in the media field first. So here's a link to a Flickr page. Here's a link to another Flickr page. Here's a link to a Vimeo page. And what's happening is Timeline is figuring out, okay, that's a Vimeo URL. There's a video there. So I'm going to figure out what code I need in order to embed that video there. And it's going to do all that for you, and it's going to put the video in place. So there's a bunch of code that's not visible here. Oh, look, there's me. Let me find the video that I might actually embed here. There's a lot of dumb videos in my suggestions. Okay, so let's say I wanted to embed this video for some reason in a timeline. If you go to the share thing, you might think, okay, well, here's how I embed it. It's all this code that you need to embed this into a web page. That's true, that code is necessary, but Timeline.js knows how to derive, like how to figure out the rest of this code, how to infer that based on just the URL. It's a standard way of doing it, and Timeline can figure that out. So just put that in there. There's quite a few other websites that it's capable of doing that with. Let me show you some. It actually has has them listed under supported media types. So if you go here to supported media types, you can see that you can embed an image directly, which is what I'm going to show you how to do. But you can also do online video files directly, direct links to audio files, SoundCloud pages, Spotify tracks, Twitter, like individual tweets. And again, it'll figure out what it needs to in order to embed it and render it in a nice looking way that's consistent with the way that timeline looks. So Imager is a service that lets you upload images, and I have recommended that in the past. However, I'm not anymore, and I'll show you why in a moment. But it can actually embed a Wikipedia article, which I think is pretty cool too. Let's try it. So I'm talking about my Game Boy actually. So let's see if I can embed this Wikipedia page. So I'm going to copy the URL for this Wikipedia page, and I'm going to try putting this into. I'm still just messing with the sample here. So let's see, what date should I associate this with? So 1989. We'll just pick a number in 1989. So let's say 1989. And we don't need to have an end date. Actually, no, we might as well. So let's do 2003 for the end date, and let's say Game Boy. I don't know. And this is Game Boy was the first handheld console to achieve massive success, something like that. So the yeah, there's other things I can put there, but under the media field, I'm going to paste the URL for the Wikipedia article, the one that I just found, and I'm going to see how that looks. All right, so as you see, this is still just that placeholder stuff, and here you go. So it does a nice job of, it has the headline, it has the first paragraph of that text, and it looks nice, right? So that's a way you can embed a Wikipedia page. And you might have a Wikipedia article for your object, like whatever you're studying. If so, wouldn't hurt to embed it. You just have to figure out what date it makes sense to embed it on. It might be something you want to do early on as sort of a way to establish like the range of it, kind of like I've done here. That kind of makes sense to me. But you're free to do different things in order to make sense of them. I just want you to use the options available to you in Timeline. Okay, so let me show you two ways to accomplish something very common, which is something that something you should definitely do, which is include images. So include your own images of your object. And I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you two ways. One way that's not as good and one way that I do recommend. So the Imager, as I said, this is a website where you can upload images, and lots of people like to use it. It is very quick and easy, so I like it for that. You go to New Post, and then you choose a photo to upload. I guess I actually need to find a photo to upload, don't I? Hang on a second. Let me get a photo to upload. Okay, so this is a photo I do want to actually include in my timeline. This is the back of my Game Boy. It's here, and there's a couple interesting things here on the back actually. You can see the name Waylon. You can also see, just barely, if you look, you can see my old phone number back then. The idea being, if I lost this, someone could call the phone number and tell us, hey, we found your Game Boy. It's interesting. So if you look at it, there's a serial number. So the G244215881, that's a unique number that identifies this exact Game Boy. And that's what I'm researching, right? I'm researching this exact Game Boy. So there are websites you can go on and look up serial numbers and sometimes figure out when and where information based on that. Those systems by which a company generates serial numbers is not, there's no universal way to do it. Every company might have their own system. So it has to be, that may not work basically for what you're doing. Game Boys, I don't believe there's a systematic way that those numbers are generated, but there could be. But anyway, because it probably won't work. If you're looking at an old smartphone, you probably won't have really much you can do with a serial number. But you might, you never know. Okay, so let's say this is the image I want to get here. So I need to first of all download it onto my computer. So I'm just going to actually I'll do, oops, that's the front. I'll go right here and then I'll say download. And I will put this in a place I can find it. Okay, so I just downloaded this to my computer. I called it gameboyrear.jpg. And I want to now insert this into a spreadsheet. Now there's no way, this is the spreadsheet this is the one I'm actually working on with my actual Game Boy data in it. There's no way for me to just upload an image into a spreadsheet. Like there's no media field, basically. I can't just upload it directly. I have to actually, that image has to live somewhere else on the web. Like it has to already be uploaded on the web in order for me to include it here. So for example, like I was able to include an image from Flickr, a video from Vimeo. These are files that are not on my computer. Those are files that are on other computers and other websites, and I'm embedding them across the web from one site to another. You have to do that, otherwise it doesn't work. So as an example of that, this is a field where I've got the URL for a supernova. Actually, let me show you my existing template, and I'll show you how I'm going to add this image here. This is what I've got so far with my object lesson demo timeline. This is the one I will share. I'll go ahead and show you what I got so far. So there, it's updated those previews, and so this is now this one. this is the one I'll share. So this is now being loaded here, and as you can see, I've started actually filling this in with real information. So this is the photo of the Game Boy, the front side, and I've said a bit about it. This is the intro slide, the title slide. Next up, I've got a picture of one of the chips. So I'm trying to give you an example of like a prehistory event, at least one lived history event, and at least one afterlife event. So this is one of those prehistory events. This is the LH5264N4 chip. And I've got an image of it, so a close-up photo of it, a brief description of it here, and also have a link to the data sheet here. And then I've got this information about it. This is the location of the factory. I have a whole paragraph I wrote about this, but it was hard to read in the spreadsheet, so I deleted that for now, but I'll put it back in a minute. But that paragraph will show up on the right. This is just showing the satellite view of this factory. And then for the road trip to Charleston, South Carolina, this is an event I remember with this, and I just pulled up the Google driving directions and then I embedded in here. I thought that was a good enough way to show the trip. Another thing that occurred to me is, like, I know we were taking a trip to see the USS Yorktown, which is docked there, or it's in like dry dock there. It's like a tourist thing, and I guess I could include a photo of that. That would also help convey the picture, convey that event. Whatever makes sense to you. There are lots of different things you can do that would help convey an event, but try to have something. Try to have media for every event in your timeline, because it helps it keeps it legible, keeps it interesting. So I recommend it. Okay, so then I've got one future event. This is, speculative. This is just me, obviously writing a short story, a fictional story setting. I've set this 30 years in the future. And unfortunately, I've just passed away in this future, and I have passed this Game Boy on to my daughter, who is giving it to her son. And as a way to show her son this ancient technology, she's found this Pokemon Red and Blue Game Boy commercial. And as you can see, the YouTube and video embedded nicely here. Mainly, I wanted to give you all a sample of how to embed a YouTube video, to show you that it works. But this is one of the speculative events that I could come up with. I was thinking about other kinds of futures for this, like what would happen if this ended up in a landfill. But I'm not going to put this in a landfill, so it's going to stick around, for a while. The other thing you could add to the final event that I added, I was trying to add something super far in the future when the Earth is consumed by the sun, but I found that if I put a date that was like the year, 7 billion years from now, it would mess up the timeline. So I don't necessarily recommend that, but there is I kind of have a workaround that can accomplish that too. If you, I'll show you what I mean in a moment. But anyway, this is what I've got so far. But let's say I wanted to add. You remember, my goal is here. I'm trying to add this reverse image as well. So let me show you a couple ways to do that. I've downloaded it to my computer. I need to put it into this here. Now it actually doesn't matter where you put the rows. What matters is the date that you assign them to. So actually, this is the wrong one. So you don't have to put them in an order. So I'm going to add this after the. I'm going to add this. I think I'll add it after right after the title slide. But I don't actually need to embed. I don't need to insert a row here. In fact, it's easier not to. It's easier just to go down to the bottom and add the information as you need it. So 1992. I think it's the first day of March. Reverse view of my Game Boy. There you can see my last name written in Sharpie. I wonder if my mom wrote that. I don't know. So I have that description now, and I can just verify that it actually shows up where I expect it to. Okay, so there's that, and there's, let's see, there it is. There's the reverse view. So it showed up third. I think that's because those three events all have the same day. So I'm going to just kind of do a quick way around that, which is just to make that earlier. And that should make that row appear second. Yeah, there you go. You don't actually have to display the date on them like I am, but that's all right. my goal is to get the media in here. So here's two ways I can do this. So remember, it has to be on the web somewhere. It's on my computer now. It has to be somewhere on the web. You can link directly to an image in Google if you make it visible and if you do some other things. It looks like you could just do this, like copy the URL and then paste it in, but you can't because of the access permissions on it. Like you have to give it permission to access it. You have to make it a public, kind of like you would share a Google Doc. You have to do that with the photo in order for it to be visible to timeline, and so it's really not worth the effort. I'm going to use Imager to do it first, and this is not the way I recommend. But here's how it would look. You go choose a photo, and then you find it. There it is. And you don't have to post it or whatever. You can just grab a link to it and click that here, and it gives you a link. So here's the link. It's imager.com/a/some random looking stuff. So copy that link, and then you can paste that link here. And I'll show you what that looks like and why I don't necessarily recommend it. So there's that, and then it takes a second to load. It'll load, and there's the image. So this is better than nothing, but you see it includes this Imager branding. Like it has this whole sort of embed card around it, basically. And I don't know, it's kind of ugly to me. Like it doesn't look that great. It adds a lot of visual, you know, it crowds out the interface. Like the timeline is already a pretty, you know, compressed space, a lot of information in a little space. But this kind of just throws that off, and it doesn't really embed very well. So I don't recommend that. Instead, I recommend linking directly to the image once it's been uploaded to a website, and conveniently, you have a website you can upload things to. So that's what I recommend. I recommend you upload your JPEG files directly to your website and then get a link to them from there. You can upload those directly using the file manager. That's probably what I would do, but there's a bit of explanation required to show you how to do that. A quicker and easier way to do it that works fine is just uploading it through WordPress. Like you've got a WordPress account somewhere, and WordPress has this concept of media, right? So you can embed, this is usually something you would interact with as you were writing a post and you wanted to embed media in it. You would just upload it directly in the post editor, but you can also just upload media on its own. If you go to the left side here, where it says media, click on media. I'm waiting for it to load so I can show you what I've got here so far. And it basically keeps a library of all the different media that you've used in your posts. You can also just add something directly, which is what I'll do now. So I just clicked on the add new, and then I've dropped this file up here, and it's coming. It does some work, like it actually uploads, once you've uploaded it, WordPress does some work to make different versions of this image, like the square thumbnail that you see here. It actually does some basically back-end processing and duplication of it, which is why, by the way, if you end up with a bunch of files and like media files in your WordPress site, it can actually fill up your storage quota faster than you would expect, even if you've only got, you know, a dozen or so images. If they're high quality images, then like high resolution images to begin with, then they're going to end up taking up a fair amount of space. Okay, so it's finally done processing. And here's this image, and I can embed this in a post and do other things with it, but all I want right now is I just need the URL for it. And down here at the bottom right, you can see the URL, it's all that, or you can just click on this button to copy the URL to the clipboard. And then with that copied, I can go in here and paste that instead of this Imager link. So I'll do that with the right click so you can see it. So now the URL says all this. It's this really long thing. It doesn't really matter. As long as it ends in .jpeg, that means that it can be embedded directly. So let's make sure that works. Yeah, there you go. And that's much cleaner. Looks a lot better than what it did before. Now, I mean, the other thing, you can see that this timeline is expecting this to be like it's kind of a tall, like portrait-oriented photo. You might want to crop these. I would probably want to crop these to fit that space a little bit more naturally with a more rectangular image, a more, you know, horizontally rectangular image. But that's, you know, kind of one of those nice, those little tweaks and touches that you may decide is not that important. But that's the kind of thing I probably would do. Okay, some other things I wanted to tell you about this particular timeline template that I've created. I have used categories to identify some of these things as prehistory, some of them as lived history, and some as afterlife. So that's something that I did over here on the right. So here's I've got two things in the prehistory, and I guess I could put this in that too. You just have to type the name of these groups, and just make sure you type them the same way. So like, okay, yeah, so you notice I actually did that wrong. So I wrote pre-history initially, and then this time I wrote prehistory like a single word. I'm actually not sure which is correct, you know, typographically, spelling wise, but let's see, waiting for it to update. I was expecting it to make a fourth category. Maybe it's still processing. Because as you can see, the reverse view is still just showing up as not in a, oh, it hasn't even updated for the, what? Hang on. It's still showing the old version. Or it is showing the old version again for some reason. Why is this? That's not what it says. I'm not looking at the right rendered one. How did it go back in time like that? Okay, there. Well, all right, it's caught up again now, I think. Because I can see the afterlife ribbon at the bottom, so that means it's probably correct, but I don't know where the... Oh, prehistory is at the top. That's right. Okay, so yeah, so that surprised me that the prehistory with like spelled that one way, it showed up way at the top. I'm not sure how it just determines that order, but you can see it's got two different groups that are should be one, right? So all you gotta do to fix that is just edit those to be spelled the same way. Yeah. Or well, it might care about capitalization. I don't know. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, so that's hopefully going to work now. Yeah, the other thing I would do, since I've already used the background color for other events in this group, it would make sense to use the same color for that, just to be consistent. Okay, so that's about it. That's about all I would recommend doing. I am kind of curious about this era, but I am a little afraid to try it, so I'm not going to. I want to show you a couple more things first, but I think it's coming together pretty well here. Yeah. Okay. So okay. Two more things I want to show you. I'm going to show you how to add longer bits of text, and then I'm going to show you how to share this somewhere else. Okay. Because that's the final step. The final step when you're done with your timeline is you need to actually let people access it. So let me, first of all, add this big chunk of text back. I typed this out earlier, but I wanted to show you how to work with longer chunks of text that include formatting in case you want to deal with that. So I've got it actually on this other computer. And then all of it? No, that's not all of it. Okay. Wait, I messed it up. There we go. I know you can't see what I'm doing. I was doing it on my other laptop, although it might have changed while I was doing it over here. Because it's real-time editing. So basically, I added 2 paragraphs of text here. It might be too much, but I had some things I wanted to say. So these are all here, and I used HTML to do that. So the first one is surrounded by a p tag and an opening and closing p tag, and the second one is also surrounded by an opening and closing p tag. Now you can't really write long bits of text in a spreadsheet cell if they're just really not designed for that. So what I would recommend is write that somewhere else in like a text editor and then copy and paste it in here. Because if you try to edit things in here, like if you hit enter, it's not going to go to a new line. It's going to go to the next cell in the spreadsheet, and that's not going to work that way. So let's see how this looks. Might be too much text actually. Sort of a judgment call. This is where it should show up on that slide here. I think I'm just seeing that lag again. And it's still showing the old ones, so literally just refreshing. How do I do a hard refresh on here? I thought I could right click on the refresh button, but maybe not. there might be some kind of minimum time that it has to wait before it refreshes the render. The rendering is happening on the timeline server, by the way. So like it has to be, like it takes my data from the spreadsheet, it does some processing, and then it returns with this view of it. And it's taking its time as far as doing that processing because it's still showing me the old information. Well, okay, so since that's taking a minute, I'm going to do one other thing on here that I wanted to show you, which is like I said, it is not possible to say like the Earth is consumed by the sun. Like that's too far in the future. If you actually put the year 7 billion 2022 in it, then it breaks things, the timeline. I'm not sure why, but it just like it zooms the time scale out so far, I think, that it sort of wraps around and starts over again. So all of your times show up as 7 billion years ago, which is not true. So I'm going to try something that occurred to me might be a workaround for that. So let me just set a date that's in the future, like 2100, right? So it's in the future, but not so far in the future. And I don't want to actually just see the date 2100. I want to see the date something else. So I'm going to use this column here called display date to try to write something else. I'm going to say 7 billion years from now as the display for that. So I'm thinking that that will show up in a way that's a bit, that makes sense and also won't make the timeline get weird. Okay, so the timeline is now back to having the correct 3 categories. Okay, there's the longer paragraphs that I wanted to write, so that's good. And that's not too bad. It fits in there okay. And then I did see one little error, but that's okay. And then let's see if the future worked. Oh yeah, so this works too. So you can see on the ribbon down here, it's marked at 2100. You can't really do much about that, but right as you can see as it's displayed, 7 billion years from now, that's what somebody would actually see in the slide view of it. All right, so there was one small thing I wanted to change about this. Not that it's that big a deal, but I don't want it to be confusing to you all. See, figure 7 is a leftover from something else that I wrote this for. And you all don't have figures. You don't need to cite figures for this. Okay, so feeling pretty good about this timeline, and I've mainly tried to show you at least one event for each of the 3 time periods that you should be focusing on, but you would hopefully end up with 12 to 15 total events. Like you would want to have a lot more than what I have here. I just wanted to give you something that's a pretty good working example of several different types of media, several different types of events, and again, I will share this spreadsheet with you all in Discord shortly. But let me show you how to do the final step, which is actually sharing it, like actually telling people about this timeline. 2 options, and I will have a recommendation, but let's say you are writing about this in your post. You should write a post about this on WordPress, so add a new post. I will add a new post, and yes, I know about the block editor. Oh yeah, wait, so let me, I've turned off visual editor on mine because I was trying to help a student who had done that accidentally, so I was trying to undo that, but let me switch myself back to the visual editor so that it looks more familiar to you, hopefully. I don't mind the visual editor, but I don't really use it. I mean, I don't really use WordPress. So, okay, so here's the visual editor. And so, the story of my Game Boy. So first of all, what we should do is write the short text version of the story of your device. So just like a paragraph, a short paragraph explaining, okay, here's the thing. A paragraph or so. Here's why I chose this device. Here's what it means to me. Here's what it doesn't mean to me, whatever. Just explain whatever you need to explain why you chose this device. And, what is the device? What is it? Why did you choose it? What did you learn? That kind of thing. So a paragraph or 2. And then you want to actually embed the timeline. So like I said, you can do it 2 ways. You can embed it or you can link to it. I'm going to try to embed it first, even though I don't like that. A lot of things I'm showing you I don't like, but you can do that. Let's just see how that looks. So I'm going to get the embed code here. Yeah, I guess I'll try that. Okay, I'm going to get the embed code. I'm going to copy that embed code. And you notice it's an iframe, it's HTML code. And this is the same kind of thing like if you're copying the embed code from a YouTube video, right? Like you go to share and then you can copy the, that kind of thing. Same kind of deal. Like you're creating some iframe code that will include some content in another web page. So let's try it, I guess. Is there an iframe block or an embed block? So embed, okay, let's try embed, enter the URL to embed. Now, does it want me to do the URL or, I don't think it wants, okay, it actually just wants a URL. Okay, so it probably wants me to do this, like this URL, right? Let's try it. Figuring things out in real time. Okay, so now I'm not using the embed code actually, so now, in case you didn't see what I did, I'm using this code, the share link, and I'm going to try to embed it using the embed block that the WordPress visual editor suggested for me. So let's click the embed button, see what happens. Oh, sorry, this content could not be embedded. Okay, that's fine. I can force it to be embedded. Let me show you how to do that. How do I delete this block? Okay, so let's do another kind of block. So another kind of block is raw HTML, and or custom HTML. And if you have some code, if you have some HTML code, you can put HTML code here. You can write your own HTML code here. And this, I'm pretty sure will work, although it may not look great. But we're gonna copy this and paste this in here. Here's the iframe embed code, and we'll see how it looks. I'm guessing not amazing, but yeah, okay, there it is. It's like weirdly over to the left. I don't know why. It has to do with the theme that I'm using. Your theme might be different, but you can see it's kind of in here. It's compressed, and so it's sort of weird. One of the differences you'll see is because it's a much narrower space for the timeline to fit into. It's put the stuff that used to be on the right in the other view is now on top where the media is on the bottom. So it's adapted. It works okay. And this is kind of what it would look like if you access this on your phone, for example. It will do a decent job of trying to fit into whatever space it has. But, it's just overall pretty small. So I think there's a lot of stuff to explore with this, and yours will be as well. So I think it makes more sense to me to link to it, provide a link to it. And that's what you can do. You can link directly to this view of it. So I can copy the URL that I'm looking at here if I want, or I can get it from the timeline page. You can also, by the way, you can do some different things to do change the settings. Make sure you do that. If you do change the settings, that will change the URL. So if you want to tweak those, then try it out here, and then see what test it in this page basically until you like the way it looks, and then you'll get a URL that includes all those customizations in the parameters for the URL. But this is good enough. The defaults are fine. I think the defaults look pretty good. So what I want to do now then is go back here. So that's one way to do it. The best way to do it though, I think, is a link. So I used timeline.js to create an interactive timeline telling the story of my Game Boy. Now, I've been over this before, I think, or I hope I have anyway, but there are good ways and bad ways to include a link. So I have the URL on my clipboard, so I can do Control-V, and you can see, I tried to paste it just now, and it came up with this whole embed thing. Remember, we just found out that doesn't work. So I'm going to remove the embed. You don't want to include just the raw HTML either, and that's what that little thing is trying to prevent you from doing. The best way to include a link is to take something you already wrote. So in this case, I think an interactive timeline is the most appropriate phrase. Select it, click the chain icon, paste it in there. Oh wait, paste it in there, hit enter. Yeah, now that's a link. And you could also do the story of my Game Boy. That might also make sense as a link here. Either of those would be fine, but both would be far superior to like just having the raw URL there for clicking. That would not be great. So let's see how that looks like just to make sure, although nothing too fancy about that addition here. So this embed is still down here. I don't need that, but you can see how much nicer this looks. I used Timeline.js to create an interactive timeline. Click. And now we're straight on the timeline. You know, that's it. And you know, that's really all you got to do. If you want to, you can see this little button here to open it in a new tab. I kind of like doing that if it's a link to an external thing like this is. So I would recommend that, but it's not going to be an issue if you forget to or if you decide not to. I'll show you what that looks like in practice. So this way, like if I click on it with it opening in a new tab, then it keeps the original tab here in case I need to go back and forth between those two. That's the idea. Okay, so that's Timeline.js. Now Timeline.js, like I said, is early on, it can be kind of fragile. So if you change some of these data fields in a way that it does not expect or that it can't parse, then it will tell you, it will give you an error. And sometimes the errors are helpful, sometimes they're not. Sometimes it just says failed to parse and there might be a code. If you do see something that fails to parse or that you see an error and you're not sure what to do about it, please send me the error code. So ask for help, first of all, but when you ask for help with specific information that helps me help you. So include a screenshot if you can't copy and paste it. Include a description of what you were doing just before it happened. These are the things that I need in order to assist you quickly. So please do that. Please be specific in asking for your asking questions about this. All right. So yeah. Okay, well, that's all I have to say at this point. If you have any questions, then of course, please ask. And I'm happy to help if I can. And as always, do your best and feel free to explore and play with the different options. If something's not working, then we'll work through it. It's fine. Okay, well, I'm going to wrap up the stream. I've been going about an hour, so that's pretty good. Of course, this will be archived on YouTube, so you can watch later if you'd like, and maybe you are already watching later. And I will be online this afternoon in Discord. If you see my green dot, then feel free to send me a message and see if I can help with. I'll see if I can help with your questions, your issues. I'm going to be working through grading stuff this weekend. I've gotten a little bit behind on that, but I'll be working through that this weekend, hopefully, so I can give you all some feedback on things by early next week. Okay, so then I'm going to switch to the outro scene, and I will wish you all a good day as I turn on, where's my background music? There we go. Okay, that's it for today then. Have a good afternoon and a good weekend. Bye.